Okay, welcome aboard. Okay, a very quick overview of who we are. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, very briefly, Suite Solutions is a professional services company. We specialize in helping companies to implement structured authoring solutions, generally DITA. We have a comprehensive approach to our services and offer a broad range of services, including the training that you are participating in today, as well consulting and style sheet development, and conversion work and other types of services that help to get up and running with a structured authoring or DITA system. Here's the next slide is a very brief picture of some of our customers and partners. We partner with a number of vendors in the field, CMS, authoring tool vendors, publishing vendors, etc. And our work with them or cooperation with them help us to kind of keep on top of the different tools and the different technologies that are out there, and to help prepare and give over that information to during training like this and other types of opportunities. Okay, without further ado, we'll blast right into the agenda. We have kind of a relatively large agenda. We'll try to get through it in the next about 56 minutes. The first thing we'll talk about is a case for dynamic content delivery. I don't know how much everyone's been hearing about that, but we're going to go over the idea of what dynamic content delivery is. I'd venture to say it's something that it's a term that's starting to be heard more and more in the, I guess, quote-unquote DITA world or DITA community. I guess XML documentation community at large. We'll talk about Eclipse Infocenter as an inexpensive option for this. We will have an overview of Eclipse Infocenter and the different functionality that's available out of the box, as well as what can be customized. We'll talk about organization of content inside the Infocenter, which basically gets more into the nuts and bolts, nitty-gritty of how the Eclipse Infocenter works. We'll talk about how to customize, some options for customizing. We'll talk about some issues of deployment, multilingual support, and then we'll try to leave some time at the end for some questions and answers. Okay. I assume all of you are with us because you're implementing some kind of a DITA workflow or DITA documentation tool set. And as part of a documentation tool set, one of the most important things is how am I going to get my content to my customers. Now, traditionally, we've had PDF, we've had online help, even Eclipse, but the expectations of content consumers, or the people who are reading our content, whether they're in our organization or outside of our organization, or actually probably say that opposite. Generally, we think of our content consumers as people who are outside of our organization, but very often the content consumers are inside our organization in different groups. The expectations of those content consumers, I think, has been growing and developing over the years, and I venture to say over the past couple of years with the expansion of social communication, social networking, etc. Those expectations have maybe grown even into demands. Some of those expectations or demands are as follows, that are listed on this slide. Number one, finding information quickly via the web search. A lot of people, myself included, when I need to go to find something, I don't necessarily go onto the website of the company that I'm of the tool or the device or whatever it is that I'm looking for help on. I'll just go to Google and try to find information. So getting information on documentation out there on the web is becoming more and more of a expectation, demand, or even a requirement. Folks are more and more asking for bite-sized information topics, which goes very nicely with the DITA architecture. Just-in-time delivery. That's people used to use that term a lot in terms of creating things or production lines. But it's also true in delivering content. What I need, give me what I need when I need it, and do it quickly. Targeted content, show me what's relevant to me. People are less patient about scrolling through reams of information, either on paper or on the web, trying to figure out what's relevant to me. You know who I am. You know the product that I have. Just give me the information that I need. Multilingual. Show me the content in my language. I don't know how many of you are doing localization, but localization is happening more and more. It's a big cost center, and one of the major ROIs for implementing data and dynamic delivery systems are based on trying to reduce that localization cost. Community feedback. People are more and more expecting or want a way to get feedback back to the people who are authoring the information, to others who are reading the information. Solution and task oriented. More and more information is becoming solution or task oriented. Show me what I need to do, and less overview information. People are more and more asking for consistency of information between support and documentation. If the documentation says this, then that's what the support people should be telling me. If the support people are telling me how to do something, then why doesn't it say that in the documentation? And portability, give it to me on my smartphone. Okay, I'm not necessarily walking around with a laptop anymore. And all this basically creates a drive towards what's called dynamic content delivery. So we move to the next slide. The next generation of publishing is coming to try to meet those demands or provide a framework so those requirements or demands or expectations are being met. So number one, we're talking about having metadata-rich information. The idea being that if metadata or information about the content is already coded inside the content itself, then that gives me the possibility to do cool things like faceted search and filtering and navigating through content based on categorization, subject matter, as opposed to just some kind of hierarchy that someone dreamed up. Multiple language, like we mentioned before, being able to filter on the fly. I have this product, I have this question, I have this skill set, I'm an engineer, I'm an end user, I'm a troubleshooter. Filter the information for me and give me what I need. Generate PDF on demand. Often folks like to search for information on the web, but like to be able to take a page or two, print it out quickly, and walk off with it. Bookmarks, annotations, collecting feedback, collecting metrics is becoming more and more in. You can say it like that. Companies are looking to find out who's reading the content, what content they're reading, how often they're coming to those pages, and developing, drawing conclusions. What content is very useful, what content isn't so useful, what content no one's looking at. If no one's looking at this content, well, let's just get it off our system, stop maintaining it, stop spending money for translating. Automated publishing and deployment platforms. That's again right up the alley of data. Pushing a button, the magic button, and getting out my various outputs and deploying them on platforms that are readily available. Incremental updates is also something that's becoming, I think, more and more, a demand for folks like us who are trying to keep the content updated. Instead of having to publish the entire corpus of the documentation and upload it to our staging server or production server, so as we much rather update that content onto the server or to our customers incrementally, whatever's changed, so let's push that up. And integration with other systems, other maybe engineering systems, maybe CRM systems, etc. So that's kind of an overview, and it's going to try to provide a framework for the rest of the talk. Although we're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of Eclipse Infocenter, I think one of the things we're trying to get across during this talk is that Eclipse can come to answer a lot of these questions or a lot of these demands. Not all of them. There's a lot of very cool systems out there, proprietary systems, and Eclipse is not going to address everything, but it can come close, and that's what we're trying to expose y'all to today. So Eclipse Infocenter, first of all, is an open source platform. It's based on as the name implies, the Eclipse platform, which is a development platform. The Infocenter actually is the help system, the online help system for the Eclipse development platform. So if I'm developing a application in the Eclipse, so as a programmer or developer, I get my documentation using the Eclipse Infocenter. If I'm developing a application using the Eclipse platform and I deploy that to my customers, I can deploy my content as a Eclipse Infocenter or even a help system. Okay, but Eclipse Infocenter can also be used as a standalone help system or standalone knowledge base or Infocenter platform. Infocenter, which is knowledge-based platform, that's really what we're talking about today. One of the nice things about Eclipse is that it's cross-platform and cross-browser. There are a few solutions, I'd venture to say, out there that are cross-platform and cross-browser and are still relatively inexpensive, but were free, but still have a rich level of functionality. Eclipse is one of them. It's an uncompiled format, which means that as opposed to HTML help or Java help or skip that, as opposed to HTML help or other formats where you need to compile them, so Eclipse Infocenter is not compiled. You can, as we'll talk about later, you can zip it up into a jar and other types of formats to deploy it, but basically it's an uncompiled format. It can be run either on a client or server, which means you can install it as an online help, and you can take that same content in the same configuration and set it up to a web server that's available to the world. It allows for localized help in one platform. We'll see some examples of that pretty soon, how you can do that. Out of the box, there's a lot of functionality, and it's customizable to create a very nice, robust interface, which you'll see. Using the Data OT, you can create packages or what's called plugins for deployment. So out of the box with the Data OT, you can create packages to set up as a plugin. Okay. Excuse me, I'm just going to turn off my Skype, which I neglected to do for the webinar. I'm sorry about that. Okay, back to our program. Okay. The Data OT allows you to generate packages for deployment out of the box, and as you can do with other trans types or transformation types, you can extend those functionalities using plugins. So you can do the same thing for the Eclipse as well. Eclipse is particularly easy to update and add content, whereas most of the other online help systems or knowledge bases, you need to somehow recompile everything together. Eclipse allows you to take a plugin, or basically a package, a small package of material that's been updated, basically just drag and drop it or upload it or FTP it to the server, however you're deploying it, and Eclipse will automatically quote-unquote recompile it, or really recompile the search so that's completely integrated to the rest of the content. That's a huge benefit. We'll see later on that Eclipse provides a tri-pane interface, TOC index search. Many of the other kind of free cross-platform or cross-browser systems provide a TOC and index, but the search is much more difficult to implement. It is possible, but it's much more difficult to implement. Provides a facility for context-sensitive help, those of you who are doing like that, as a standalone help. As we will talk about a lot, this can be customized. And as we talked about before, although it was developed for Eclipse, it can be deployed as a standalone help system. Okay, what you're going to see on your screen now is an example of the out-of-the-box Infocenter. And what I'm going to do at this point is show it to you kind of live, and we'll do a quick run through it to see the features that it provides. Okay, you should be seeing on your screen now basically an out-of-the-box info. So when I say out-of-the-box, I mean if you were to take the Eclipse, download it, install it the way it's packaged from theeclipse.org, and create a package using the Data OT, and then plug it into your system, this is what you would see. And that's exactly what I did over here. I basically took the Data OT samples content and compiled it and put it into the Eclipse. Okay. So here you see on the left side the tri-pane interface. Here we have the talk. We have an index. We have a search. Okay. We go back to the talk. We have a drop-down books that you can navigate through. It's nothing too exciting there. One thing you'll notice here on the right side is beside the content, we have book breadcrumbs. These breadcrumbs were generated automatically by Eclipse. Okay, no special processing there. You'll notice these links here, links to the parent topic. These were generated by the did.ot. It's not connected with Eclipse per se, but this is something that comes out of the box with the did.ot, loading it into Eclipse. Okay, there's a nice search ability here. Okay, the search is kind of nice. It gives you the title of the topic with the short description. Okay, and if I would have more than one book in here into the set, it would give me like headings, so I can see which book this topic came from.
You can do that by, if you see in the toolbar buttons where it says search results, the leftmost button will give that to you. Not where it says search results, go down a little bit, but left to the right, there's a button, yeah, that button. That'll give you the categories, the book names.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay. What's also nice here is there's something called search scope, which allows me to limit the search by particular books. So if I have a series of books online, so I can decide to search only within those books, and then save that. So if we're to create a search scope, I can say, you know what, only search in these two here. In fact, I can even go back down here and say, you know, only search inside the tasks. I don't need to know about the concepts. Okay. Okay, when I redo that search, then you see that I only have two topics here. Okay. Okay, here on the right side, we have a forward and back buttons. Home, show in table of contents, print, and bookmark. Okay, so I don't know if how many of you have fooled around with the tool up until now, but that's basically out of the box what you get. Now, what I'd like to show is how it looks after how we've customized it. I'm going to show you an implementation that we did for a particular customer that you can see online. Now, this is basically the same platform, the Eclipse platform, but as you can see, it looks a little bit different. Okay, first of all, we have the table of content looks different. The icons have been replaced to have something a little bit more sleek, I guess, or something a little bit more or less dated. The icons on the bottom have been replaced with text. In this case, the customer decided that they did not want an index; they only wanted searching contents. Okay, what I did is I clicked on a link on the left side. I think what you should see here is a page. You can see also here the breadcrumbs, but the breadcrumbs have been expanded a little bit. So you can see for each of the levels in the hierarchy here, you can see the children in the hierarchy. It allows you to kind of quickly jump to something that may be relevant. Okay, that's part of the customizations that we're done. I'm just kind of, the reason why I'm going through these is to kind of whet your appetite, what can be done in this platform, the extent that can be customized. Now, couple things I'd like to point out also, which although they're not connected to the Eclipse platform per se, they are, I think, interesting features that you can implement also in the Data OT when you're publishing your content. For example, here you should see there's the date last updated. So your content, people who are reading the content can see this page when the last time this content was updated. They can see if this is relatively new content or content that's been older. If this is a page that they come to frequently. If you're a technician and you're constantly coming and doing the same tasks over and over again, it'd be nice to know whether something's actually changed here or not. What I'd like to do is scroll down to the bottom here. Another thing that was put in here is a link here to provide feedback. And this feedback actually is a link to a SurveyMonkey, which they use to collect feedback on their documentation. This kind of goes to what we were talking about before about an expectation to be able to provide feedback, and providing feedback is useful for us also, and to hear from the user community what they think about our documentation. Hopefully they write nice things as well as constructive suggestions. Now behind the scenes also, if I were to right-click and view the source, you would see that inside this page there's also coded Google Analytics. So since this Infocenter is on their website, they're using Google Analytics to collect data also about the content, which content is being accessed, how often, how many clicks, the frequency of the clicks, etc. Okay, that's also was very for this organization. It actually provided a sea change in how they look at their documentation and their budgeting for what documentation they're investing in. Okay, up here on the right side, we have some of the same functionality that we saw before, but the icons look a little bit nicer. At least I think so. Okay, a couple changes here. The front, the forward and back buttons were changed to be browse buttons. So instead of just going back to the last page you were in, it actually browses through the help, or browses through the info center as we would expect in a help set. Okay. Okay, going up here also, we see this language drop down. If I click on this language drop down, we see a list of all the languages that are available for this documentation. The languages that this documentation was localized or translated into. Now here I'm just going to choose Japanese. Once I click on Japanese, you'll see that not only the content is translated, you'll see on the right side as it comes up, but also the interface was translated. And this is all done on the fly. Okay. Okay, so we have the talk and the search. Okay, other elements of the interface have been translated. Okay, and I think that's a pretty nice feature. Now, out of the box, Eclipse has nice has robust functionality for handling localized content. Generally, the localized content is based on the browser settings. So if I'm browsing to this from Japan, or my browser is set to be defaulted to Japanese content, so the Infocenter will automatically boot up in Japanese. This drop-down box is something that was added in as part of this implementation. Is also something that you could do as well. Okay, let me go back to English because that's what I can read. I don't know about you guys. Okay, moving over to the left side. I'm going to point out some features here. Some of the features here are what we expected to be before. There's some newer options here. One is to collapse all was there before. One is to send this this page to a friend, so I can email the link to this to somebody else. This is a print was there before. And there's another feature which allows you to generate a PDF on the fly. So if I'm navigating through the system here, and I want just a PDF of what I have here, storage link 2.3, or better yet, if I want a PDF of just the storage link, main topic, and everything underneath it, I could go and click on this PDF, and a PDF will be generated on the server on the fly. And I can go and I can download that. Okay, so actually going and downloading that. Okay, you can see it coming up on your screen now. Okay. So that's another nice feature that also can be implemented. Again, this is not out-of-the-box Eclipse, but this is an example of what can be customized and added during scripting and some custom development into the interface. I'm just going to minimize this. Okay, Aliza, is there anything that I'm missing? Is there anything else in this interface that was customized that would be worthwhile pointing out?
Well, you can add your own banner to the top. You can add, the same way you could do a lot of these customizations, you can add a banner to the top. So you have your own company banner on the top of the window. Okay,
very nice. Okay, one thing I'd like to add also as well, we're talking about customizations, is Eclipse out of the box works better or works nicely in Internet Explorer, or works better in Internet Explorer than some of the other browsers. For this particular customer, for other customers, we did some work to try to increase their cross-browser support. This also something that they can go ahead and do. You should kind of know that that's one of the constraints, or I guess things to look out for, is that it works best in Internet Explorer. And with some work, you can get it to work nicely on or increase the level of functionality on the other platforms. Okay, so whereas you'll see the content okay, and you'll see the basic functionality okay, certain of the features might not work in some of the other browsers. For example, the bookmark functionality does not work in Chrome, or although it does work in Firefox and IE. Aliza, are there any other specific examples that you can think of that the cross-platform is limited in the Eclipse?
Not offhand. Sometimes like the look and feel doesn't always match up. The fonts don't match up between browsers. It really depends. Okay. I don't remember offhand what everything was.
Okay.
Functionality that's not available in a browser usually is not even visible.
Meaning that Eclipse won't show that feature.
Eclipse will drop the button, right? Like if you look here in this picture that you have up is the Eclipse Infocenter in Chrome, and there's no bookmark button there.
Okay. Good, thanks for pointing that out. Okay, moving along. As we mentioned, there's a tri-pane interface. Now we're going to kind of get into some more details of the interface and the customizations and how to generate the content and get it and deploy it in from the Ditto OT, and then deploy it to as an info center. So the organization of the content is basically what you would expect from other help formats. There's a file, an XML file that determines the table of contents, and that is the file that's generated automatically by the Ditto OT. There's an XML file that determines the index. Again, that's also created by the Ditto OT. There's a context sensitivity content file, which is, I believe, not out of the box at OT, but you can. There are plugins that you can download and use. Aliza will get into that a little bit later. There's a project file or a plugin.xml that's also generated by the Ditto OT, and that basically has links to the talk, to the index, context, and other files that we'll be talking about a little bit later. And it also has a manifest MF file which is generated. Aliza will be talking about that shortly as well. Now, what I'd like to point out is that these files are not magic. They're XML files that you can get in. You can understand how they work, and once you understand how they work, you can sometimes use them to make slight changes to how you want them to behave or how you want them to appear, okay, based on customizations to your Ditto OT. Okay, at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Aliza. Aliza, do you need me to do something to unshare my screen, or can you take over from here?
Oh, yeah, I can take over from here. I'm sorry, I didn't. Yes. Okay, wait a second. Sorry. Share my screen. Okay. Okay, wait a second. Okay. The table. We'll start with the table of contents and the index. Eclipse is a case sensitive platform, so you have to make sure that all of your paths are the correct case. You shouldn't use spaces or anchors in file names, specifically the table of contents. It breaks your breadcrumbs and it breaks the sync talk, because those are looking at the table of contents to find out where it is in the tree, and it won't match up if you have an index. It just takes the file name. It doesn't match up with if you have an anchor in it. Out of the box, the Ditto OT does not give you a top-level topic for the plugin. Actually, that might not be true. It might do give it to you. It might just go to the first page. You can have the table of contents is basically a nested list of entries, and you can have a topic head, the equivalent of a topic head there with no page linking to it. So that will give you a list of all the child entries. But you can make, if you want to make sure that every page has one, so the top level, which is called the talk, which is the book level, can or cannot, does not necessarily have to have a page, but it could have one. So you can make one of your own or have a data source to go and get that for you. Okay. This is what a sample table of contents file looks like. This was built out of the Ditto OT, because it's the Ditto OT sample files. No. Oh, I lost my network connection.
I think you're fine, Aliza. We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm here. Okay, good. No, just okay. So this is a sample table of contents file. The Ditto OT actually out of the box. The table of contents, the name of the file is the name of your ditamap.xml. So if your ditamap is called, in this case, hierarchy.xml, hierarchy.ditamap, your table of contents would actually be called hierarchy.xml. I'd like to actually change it to be talk.xml for the simple reason that it makes translation easier. We'll see a few slides later about how the multilingual support works, so that the file names all have to match. So if you have if your table of contents for English is hierarchy.xml, but your Spanish is called hierarchy-es.xml, it won't find your table of contents. So you always have to, it's always called, there's only one table of contents in a file. If it's always called talk.xml, it should automatically find it. Okay, so a table of contents is actually quite simple. It's built off of your ditamap, so it takes the nav title, it takes the title of your topic, and when the Ditto OT pulls everything in together, it pulls in the title of the table of contents, title of the topic into the ditamap, and that's what it uses to pull us in. Just like it would use the title to make a table of contents in PDF, or a table of contents in HTML help, or even XHTML. So it's doing the same thing. It's pulling the title from that topic into this file. You could have any number of nesting here. Okay. Okay. This is a sample of an index file. An index file is just a list of entries. You have, in this case here, you have the keyword, which is the index term. It will be your index term in DITA. And then the href to exactly where it goes, and the title of that topic. In case you have two entries that have the same keyword, so you can say, okay, changing oil in the car, and then you'd have another one that says changing oil in your tractor. You know which one to pull up. You can have nested entry. I don't have a sample of it here, but you could have nested entries in your index also. You could have a nested topic, so you could have second level, third level entries. Index.xml, the name of that file comes out of the toolkit actually calls it index.xml, so that's not a file that would have to be renamed. Okay. This is an example of the context.xml, how context sensitivity works. Okay, context sensitivity works. It's based on two parameters. You have an ID. Okay, that would be your topic alias. The topic alias. It has an href. It tells you which topic it's pointing to here. To call this, you would have to append you prepend the plugin ID, which is the unique identifier. Okay, so we'll see what the plugin.xml looks like in just a minute. But this file, you would call it saying my plugin ID dot and then the context ID, and that would pull up this piece of information. Okay, can you hear me now?
Thanks.
Okay, sorry. I'm not sure what happened. Okay. Okay. The description is pulled either from the label, the title, or from the short description element. Okay, if you don't have a short description, it'll just pull your title in. I'm not sure where I got cut off. Each plugin has an ID, and you would call it by plugin ID dot and the context ID. Out of the box, the Eclipse will just return you a list of all your contexts.
Aliza?
We'll just give you, yeah?
We have a question. Where are descriptions pulled in in the context?
They're pulled in either from your short description if you have one in your topic, or from the title if it doesn't exist.
Okay. And is context XML generated?
It's not out of the box. It's something that you'd have to do by hand. You could make a transformation to do it.
Okay.
There's the CS help plugin for the Ditto OT, which can build this, but it's looking at a very specific format.
Meaning that if you code
I had discussed this.
Meaning that if you code
you had to use their elements. You had to use their elements for it.
There are elements specific elements for coding the context IDs.
Right, yeah. The context IDs are stored outside of your Ditto topics, and it basically runs on this. You'd have a Ditto map that has only your context IDs and some information, and then all of your topic someplace else. And you'd have to run both transforms, which isn't necessarily so helpful. I've discussed this in a previous webinar, the one about customizing HTML. So I don't know if we really have time to go and discuss it right now, how to actually build this file. I'm sorry.
Okay, so if we have some time, maybe we'll go back to this at the end.
Okay. This is a sample plugin plugin XML. This is what ties it all together. Eclipse is looking for, Eclipse has what they call the plugins directory, and in there you can have jar files or you can have a folder. You don't have to jar it. It's easier. Out of the box, the DITA-OT does not jar. You get a directory structure. And you can take that directory and dump it into the plugins, and Eclipse will find it. A lot of companies find it easier to jar their documentation. So you have one jar file per book. And it's easier to pass around one jar file than to have to worry about uploading multiple files. Okay. So this pulls it all together. Eclipse is looking for this file to say, what is this directory? What is this holding all together for me? So we're going to go through it. We have, the name would come from the title of your map. The ID is the unique identifier for this plugin. Okay, it's pulled from the map ID, the ID off of the map, the ID attribute. And have some customers who don't use that. They actually move to a different, they've added their own customized attribute specifically for Eclipse ID, partially because the CMS they were using was taking and using that ID for a GUI ID, and it wasn't helpful. Okay. Each part of adding a token index and context is called an extension in Eclipse. So we have an extension point. It points to our talk, and it tells us what the name of the file is. We have the same thing with the index. It tells us this extension. This is saying this I have a file called index.xml. What does that mean? It's what Eclipse knows as an index. Okay, so it's expecting index.xml to look a certain way, but this is saying use index.xml as my index. It's not going to look for it it's not going to look for it out of the box. It's not going to by default look for it. We have to say specifically this is my index file. And the same thing with context. I have to say here's my context. This is I want to have context sensitivity, and this is the file that I'm using for it. Okay. 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 Search, the search tab in there, it's available in Eclipse. It only looks in files that are in the table of contents. So if you have a topic ref in your DITA map that says talk equals no, it's available in the Eclipse, but your end user can never search for it. So if you want to have something that's talk equal no, then you have to have some sort of link to get to it, because there'll never be a way of finding it. Okay, it looks all over your topic. So if you add metadata keywords, it takes all your the DITA-OT will take your keywords out and put them into a metadata tag, and that's used for extra search results. So it'll search that also. So you don't necessarily have to have the word in your documentation, but as long as it's a keyword on it, then it'll pull it up. And the search pulls in the title tag. It doesn't look for your heading. It looks at the title tag, and that comes from the search title element in your DITA source, or the title element if the search title doesn't exist. So this way you can have, if you have a very long title and you want a shorter title in the search, you can overwrite it. Okay. The Eclipse comes with its own search. It has its own built-in search. You can plug in your own you can plug in any other search engine also. There's some links here you have some links here on how to plug in a different search engine, how other search engines work. The first time you run an Eclipse Infocenter, the first time you search on it, it's not per person. It's actually the first person who overall who runs and does a search, it builds an index off of a search index, but that only gets run once. So you have to, with the first person who does a search will have to wait a little bit. So if you deploy it, then it can always be someone in your company who does it so that your end users don't have to wait for it. And I had a question from someone about Eclipse, and they wanted to know is that if they rebuild the IC or the plugin, I've given someone a URL to documentation. Somebody called up support, and support said, here's a link to this documentation. Can they come back a month later? I've gone and updated everything. Will it stay the same? And as long as your file names, as long as you haven't changed the file name of your HTML file, and you haven't changed the plugin ID, then your URLs will stay the same. Any questions so far about that? Okay. We're going to go on to what's configurable, on what changes you can make. Joe showed us an out-of-the-box Eclipse Infocenter, and he showed us a customizable one. Okay. So there are some UI changes that are configurable without going into the DITA-OT, without going into the Eclipse code and opening it up and making changes to it. Okay. So in order to customize the Eclipse platform without opening it up, you have to make your own plugin. You can make plugins that aren't documentation plugins. You can have plugins that just define what the interface is going to look like. Okay, it has the same structure. That you don't have a table of contents, index context. You have a few other elements, but there's some links here to help us out with it. And it's built off of an ini file, which has a bunch of key value pairs, which let you change a bunch of information. Lets you change which order the book should be in your table of contents. If you want to hide or show panes, if you want to change colors, if you want to add a banner graphic, you want to customize the welcome page, you want to change the graphics. So all of those things are available out of the box. You can create your own plugin, put all of the files, all the information into it, and deploy that. We'll see how actually to deploy it, because out of the box, the Eclipse doesn't know about it. You have to tell the Eclipse that you want to run it with your product, and it will pull in all of that information. Here's a list of UI changes that would require coding changes. Pull it into Eclipse, modify it, export it again, and dump it back into Eclipse, and you'll see all of your changes. So things that would require changing is if you want to change the order of your buttons, if you want to add new buttons to it, you want to change, there's a question here.
The audio for a couple seconds, so we lost one of the something you were talking about in the beginning of this slide.
Oh, okay. So this is a list of the Eclipse. You can go. The Eclipse Help platform is based on a jar file, and you can open up that jar file in the Eclipse platform and modify it. Okay, that you have all of the source code available to you. It's JavaScript, Java server pages, and Java code, and it's all available to you for you to change. So things that would require changing would require you to go into that code and modify it would be like if you want to change the order of your toolbar buttons, adding new buttons, changing the functionality of existing buttons. And we saw that the next and previous buttons browse through the table of contents versus out of the box it was through your browse history. Changing the look and feel of your breadcrumbs. And some colors of the frame set needed to be changed there. Some colors are actually hard-coded into the code. We also had to go into there to make more cross-browser compatibility. We went through and tried to tweak as much as we could to get as much functionality available across most available browsers nowadays, including the look and feel, not just the functionality that's available, but also the look and feel. Okay. Okay. This is how to set up a server. When you download the whole Eclipse platform, you can run it from there. It's not necessarily so helpful for a server-based item. This is some links on how to download. Eclipse is already up to 3.5. I think 2. I know definitely 1. I have somebody who's using 1. I think they're up to 3.5.2 already. Okay. Sorry. So there's a list of files here about which ones you need to get this to run by itself without having to. The Eclipse platform is very heavy. You download the Eclipse IDE, it's like 164 meg. And you obviously don't want to put such a big file up onto your server. I was able to create a WAR file for a customer that was only 15 meg. So there's a lot. There's a lot less code. Jar files that are needed to get this to run on a server. Okay, so here's the links on how to this. I'm sorry I'm going through this fast. We're getting up out of time. Okay. You could, a lot of people want to run this for a server using Tomcat or another Java bean application like DM Spring Source Server. DM Spring Source is nice that you can update it while it's how to create a WAR. A WAR is a web archive similar to a zip, like a jar and RAR and all of file names with those names. It basically just pulls out exactly the files that you need out of the Eclipse installation that you need, plus a few more that it tells you to go and download and pull in from various places. So in Tomcat, you can just take that whole directory and dump it into web apps, or you can make it actually into a WAR file and put it into Spring Source Server. We saw in the Citrix example, an example that Joe had showed out of the box, your user, the URL was localhost and then the port /help. Citrix actually changed it to Prodocs, and in Tomcat, you do that just by changing the folder name. So instead of putting a folder called help with all of the necessary files, you'd call it my help Prodocs. That's how Citrix did it. And in Spring Source, you would just name the WAR files called products.war. Okay. This is how to deploy and launch if you're going to be using it directly from the Eclipse installation. It's a Java command line. We're going to go through it a little bit. So you would take your whole output directory and copy it into the Eclipse plugins. Eclipse goes through the plugins folder and looks in everything in there, and will load up anything it finds a plugin.xml file, similar to how the .ot works. You have your you can put a new plugin. You have all your folders and plugins, and then each one has a plugin.xml. So it looks through that. So we're going to go through the different pieces of this. Okay. We have Java class path tells us where to look. So we're looking. We want to load this file. Okay, the one that we're loading is going to be org.eclipse.help.base, this a version number at the end. We want to load help org.eclipse.help.standalone.infocenter. That's how we want to run it. They have a few different options. We want to run infos in order to get what Joe showed us is called Infocenter. We want to start it. We have to tell it where Eclipse it lives, what port it exists on. So that's a configurable. That 8081 was a completely configurable piece of information. And there's dash products, which allows us to bar buttons.
We lost your we lost your audio. Can you explain that? Can you explain the product again?
Yeah, I'm gonna. Okay, product is saying. Well, we said that if you want to customize, the Eclipse, we can make our own plugin that holds all of the customizations. It holds our new welcome page, our new buttons, our banner, and there's specific ways of setting it up. The documentation is actually pretty good about telling us how to set it up, and this tells it to use that jar file. Eclipse doesn't know to use our customizations, and using dash product with the name of our product will let it know. Okay, can everybody hear me? Was that clear? Okay, so this lets us tell Eclipse that we want to use this product. So you can actually have one Eclipse Infocenter and have multiple products, multiple brandings on the same Infocenter. Okay. Once we've set it up, you can launch the help by going to the page, to the start page. This is index.jsp. And then to shut it down, you actually have to open the command window that has your start command line in there. Actually is not available to use. You have to open a new command window and change the command with shutdown instead. Okay, so it just uses shutdown instead. Okay, let's go on to the next. Okay, so in order to update Infocenter, so if you're using the Java command line for Eclipse, you create your jar file or your folder. You'd have to stop the server and put it in and then restart your server. You'd have to do the same for Tomcat. If you're using Spring Source, you can just open up the WAR file, update it, and it will catch the change and automatically pull it in. Okay. Multilingual support. Okay. There's two pieces to multilingual support. There's the UI, right? You have the UI. You want the UI to be configurable. You want the contents, the word contents, to appear in the language that the person is reading. And you also have the content. So we're going to do both. We're going to start with the UI. So all the strings in the UI are configurable. They're in every language has its own properties file. Okay, so they're all key. It's like an INI file. It's a key value pair. So in this case, I have for send mail, I have send mail, and then the string in English would be send this content. In German, it would be something else. I don't know how to say that in German, I'm sorry. And then to call from JSP, there's a object called servlet resources getString, and it will pull in that send mail. And it uses request to know what language to pull in. So this is if you have a new button or you want to change the string or you have a new language, so you'd add such a file and modify it. The file is an ANSI file. So you'd have to, like in Japanese or Chinese, you'd have to have the actually ANSI code, /u, and the Unicode number typed in there. You can't have the Unicode characters. You'd have to have the Unicode number. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Localization in Eclipse is called a fragment. You have your plugin, which is your base language, which is if someone does not come in with a language or the content does not exist in the language that they want, show this content. But translated is called a fragment. You don't have to have, it's set up a slightly different way. Okay. There's no plugin.xml. It uses something called fragment.xml, which says it creates a relationship between the main, saying this is the main content, and I'm the translation of that. Okay, we're going to see what that file looks like in a minute. You would have to have all of your files translated. Your talk, your index, your context files would have to be translated. Obviously all of your content would have to be translated. And it has a slightly different structure than the main plugin. And in the main plugin, you have your jar file or your folder, and everything is just in that folder. You don't have to have any special directory structure. As long as everything points to the right places, it doesn't matter. But in here, we have to have a folder called NL. I just use dashes for indenting. Okay, and then that was required, and then you'd have to have language code. So in this case, we're doing German. You'd have a DE. In the case of simplified Chinese, you'd have a language code of ZH, and the country code, which would be CN, I think is simplified Chinese. I think traditional is TW. So, and then in that folder, you'd have all your content, your index, your talk, your context. You have all of your files would be in that directory. So you can't just have everything in your plugin. You'd have to have this directory structure. You can jar the directory and have one jar file per language, or you can include all of this inside of your main plugin. So you could have one plugin that has all of the languages in it. Depends on how you like things set up, if you like big chunks of information or small chunks of information. Okay, language. The language, it first looks for language and country. Okay, it's always a two-letter language code underscore country code, two-language country code. So it's first going to look for language and country combination. If that doesn't exist, it'll go just to the language. And if that doesn't exist, it'll go to the main default language plugin. Okay.
Is that based in the browser?
I want to come to it soon. It's by default, it's based on your browser, settings. But we saw with the Citrix example that there's a drop down there that you can actually override it and pull down the language that you want. Okay, it passes it as a query string. Okay, so this is a sample fragment.xml. It's a lot smaller than the plugin.xml that we saw before. Okay, this is just, I made a fragment.xml to match the plugin.xml. So in this case, my plugin ID has to match the plugin that I'm translating. Right? This is going to be my English copy of it. And then I made an ID which just has to be unique. So in this case, I took the same plugin ID and I I just appended my language code to it. Say this one is my Japanese version. It doesn't have any other information. It doesn't discuss my table of contents, doesn't discuss my index, doesn't discuss the context. It's going to take all of that information from my plugin so that all of that information has to be the same here. So my table of contents has to have the same name, and the index has to have the same name. That's why for some customers, we changed the table of contents to be talk.xml instead. Okay. How does Eclipse help determine which language? Okay, so Eclipse lets you have one info center, and you can choose which language you want to see it in. It first chooses the language of your browser. So I went through IE, Chrome, Opera, Firefox, and tells you how it went in for each one, how to change the language of your browser. I could not find it in Safari. Okay, and then you can override the browser language by adding $lang equals and then the lang code to the URL. So you can pull up a different language if you want. If you have right to left languages, Hebrew or Arabic, it will actually switch around your frame set so that the table of contents is on the right side. Okay, the code will actually switch it around so you have your table of contents on the right side and then your contents on the left side. So nice for people who read right to left. And that's the end. Any questions? Any questions for anybody?
Okay, thank you very much for being intensive audience. We went a few minutes over, but thank you very much.
What, I'm sorry?
I've said thank you everybody for joining us. Anything else, Aliza, that you'd like to add before we break?
I don't.
Okay, we lost Lisa's audio. There's a question, is it possible to get this presentation in soft copy? The presentation will be a recording of the presentation. I'm sorry, go ahead, Aliza.
It could be a heavy platform, but in some ways it's actually easier on a browser. So it's a heavy to deploy, but in other cases it's not as much behind-the-scene code, so it actually will work faster than other web help systems online.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. Okay, very good. Okay, there was a question about the presentation. A link to the presentation and the recording should be sent to you probably tomorrow. Feel free to be in touch. Any feedback that you have would be very much appreciated. Thank you, and have a good day. We're going to break now. Thanks.
Thank you.